Chapter 2. Inconclusive Inception. The door slid open and a lady walked in. She introduced herself to the team as Dr. Shahista. She was a prominent psychiatrist who had been awarded and applauded for her significant work in the field of hypnotism and had received funding for her research. She was appointed by and for the government as and when needed. She had been called from Pune, Maharashtra, her hometown. She was in her mid-40s. 5.5 feet tall, Dr. Shahista was beautiful, fair-complexioned and elegant. She bore honor and pride in her personality, and an aura of optimism surrounded her. Copper-brown hair hung freely past her waist. She never forgot to wear an amiable smile. Apart from that, she wore a black embroidered kurti, a cream patiala salwar, a black printed dupatta across her shoulders, a traditional Indian ensemble, and a pair of traditional jutiyan, handcrafted leather shoes. God has not seen it fit to distribute evenly the gifts of beauty and brains. However, Dr. Shahista possessed both. Capapai, she was adorned with varying jewel stones worn for all sorts of peace and fulfillment. She had a tabiz, an amulet or locket containing holy verses, fastened on her left bicep, 2 golden bangles on the other hand, a thin golden chain around her neck, and a few rings with embedded stones affixed on her fingers. The man was still tied to the same chair, but the faces around him were none he had seen before. The dull silhouette of each person seated behind the encircling tables was all that he could make out, apart from an intense fog farther away, starting from the tip of his nose. He was subconsciously awake. He was not mentally present because of a concentrated narcotic drug that he had been compelled to take down his nostrils. His vision blurred as he tried to regain his senses. After meeting her colleagues, Dr. Shahista took over and sat right in front of the captive. From the way he flinched before his eyes got fully accustomed to the light, it was evident that the man had stayed in the dark for quite a long time. He saw her and suddenly found that she was staring him in the eyes. Her eyes were intense and deep, a hue of sea blue. They seemed to possess the power of hypnotism. Something about this man told her that he also held a secret of his own. At the same time, she realized that even when the man had been given the highest degree of drugs, no wave of fear or worry once crossed his face. He seemed like a man of courage and confidence. All said and done, the interrogation was now to commence. Before she could say anything, in an unperturbed tone and gesture, the man intervened and said, "Om Shastri," introducing himself. Dr. Shahista wouldn't have been dismayed had this man tried to free himself and scream, which was quite routine for Shahista. However, his calmness left her confused, and she looked at Dr. Srinivasan. The man also turned his head in the direction where Shahista's eyes were stuck. The Agori had to peep a little farther to catch a clearer glimpse of Dr. Srinivasan. As soon as he did that, his eyes widened and he almost screamed, "Chinna?" All their heads turned towards the sound, astonished. "What?" asked Dr. Batra in his throaty voice, confused. The man continued looking at Dr. Srinivasan as if he was seeing him after a very long time. Dr. Srinivasan was offended. He felt he was being mocked. Virbhadra too was astonished by the incident. He had never met a man like this. All of a sudden, a palm with a piece of cotton covered Om Shastri's nose from behind. The smell from the cotton was nauseating. He was falling into a well of silence. No thoughts, no feelings, all voices muted. The man did not realize that he was being hypnotized. "Who are you?" Dr. Shahista asked the captive. "Om Shastri," he replied in a state of trance. "We know that, Mr. Shastri," Dr. Shahista affirmed. "Tell us what we don't know," she continued. "You don't know anything," murmured Om Shastri. "Yes, Mr. Shastri, we don't know things, which is why you are here. But the one thing that we know for sure is that this isn't your real name." "What is your real name?" repeated Dr. Shahista. "I don't remember," said Om Shastri in a feeble voice. An unusual answer from a hypnotized person, thought Dr. Shahista. Sitting on one of the chairs with a mythological book in his hands, Abhilash said, "Liar." "He cannot lie," Dr. Batra countered. "He has been injected with the narco-analysis drugs." Dr. Batra was clearly frustrated. "Narco?" said Abhilash, like it was French to a Greek, and continued looking at Dr. Batra for a reply. "It's a truth serum. One cannot lie after taking it," said Dr. Batra curtly, showing no interest in the explanation. Dr. Tej Batra was a sincere and mature person. He was driven only by logic and intelligence. A bit quick-tempered, Dr. Batra was at times a little unpredictable. Rarely did situations lift his mood and make him happy. "And above that, he is hypnotized," intruded Dr. Shahista, in firm agreement with Dr. Batra. Both of them looked at Abhilash, expecting surrender. Abhilash shrugged and whispered, "There are things beyond medical science," and continued reading his book. Abhilash had spent the 30 years of his life with his head in Hindu mythology books, so his knowledge on the subject was boundless. Being a descendant of a Brahmin family of Raj Purohits, administrative priests, in a small town called Ambikapur, his family was treated like gods, driven by people's superstitious beliefs. Honored with the highest forms of respect and prestige, he had a massive ego that reflected in his attitude. Criticizing others for their mistakes was in his blood. He was 5 feet and 8 inches tall, dark-complexioned, with a plump physique. He was wearing an ill-fitting white kurta paired with blue jeans, unaware of his belly showing. Abhilash was a staunch believer in myths and superstitions, and his appearance proved it. He had put on various rings with various stones for various purposes. He never failed to give his advice on which stone to trust in a particular problem, even if he hadn't been asked for it. A Raksha Sutra, protective strand of cotton, was tied to his left wrist. His neck carried a rudraksha, the seed of a plant believed to be a shield against bad luck and ill health, string. His forehead had a U-shaped sandalwood tilak traced on it, and he wore Kolhapuri chapals, slippers, on his feet. He carried an old-fashioned jute bag on one of his shoulders, and it contained a few books on Hindu mantras. Verses. "Tell us whatever you remember, Mr. Shastri," said Shahista, coming back to the point. Om Shastri's face reflected a myriad of expressions. Smiling, calm, tense and afraid, rapidly changing as he spoke. "I remember Banda Bahadur," Om Shastri uttered with his eyes closed. Dr. Batra looked surprised by that name, as if he too knew Banda Bahadur. "Who is he?" Abhilash demanded. "My general," said Shastri. "Is he also a part of your team?" "Yes." "Where is he now?" "He is dead." "How did he die?" "He was killed." "Who killed him?" "Farooq Siyar did." "Who else can you recall?" "Sanjay." "Who Sanjay? Sanjay Dutt? Sanjay Sori? Or Sanjay Leela Bansali?" retorted Abhilash in a sarcastic tone. The girl who had questioned Abhilash about the Agori Gufford. LSD, Lisa Samuel da Costa. A professional hacker, LSD was involved in frequent online forgery and bank account seizures. At the young age of 25, she had caught the attention of the Indian cyber cell, but she wasn't in the least bothered about that. She had all the expertise without a degree. LSD was a beautiful girl, raw and unpolished in her mannerisms, smart and intelligent in her work. She had an off-handed outlook towards everything but her job. "Could be Sanjay Manjrekar," LSD chuckled. LSD played it fast and loose. Her tongue was seldom in her power. She had a face anyone could read instantly and know her random thoughts. LSD had come to this place from a small town, which had a significant impact on her language being accented but unimpressive. She had black wavy hair. Her eyes were almond brown. She wore a floral white dress with lots of accessories and a bold black frame, with her bright, high heels showing off her toned legs. She'd put on a couple of contrast bands and bracelets around her wrists, and an axe pendant hung around her neck. "Sanjay, the son of Gavalgan," said Om Shastri. "And how do you know him?" Shahista asked. Sanjay was the one who guided Dhritarashtra, king of Hastinapur, during the war. Om replied. I met him at that time as I was the Prime Minister of Hastinapur, and my name was Vidur. He continued. Abhilash at once started pondering over the names and spoke slowly as he did so. I've heard this name before. Anyway, Shahista wanted to proceed. You don't get it. He is claiming to be alive during the time of the Mahabharata, Abhilash retorted. Do you want me to believe in all his mythological nonsense? This isn't nonsense. Before Abhilash could complete his statement, Shahista threw another question on Om. What other names do you have, Mr. Shastri? Sushen, Om Shastri replied as a smile crossed his face. What did you do as him? Shahista emphasized. I worked as a Vaidya, a person who makes herbal medicines and cures the diseases of common people. Is that it? Or did you use any other names? Shahista probed. I was also Vishnu Gupt once, he replied. Shahista rolled her eyes at yet another name and threw her arms in the air. And what did you do as this Vishnu Gupt? She asked with a bewildered expression. Om Shastri started mumbling something that everyone found hard to comprehend.